as Will said, a lot of what I do comes out of translating, and I should say, because I know already that there's one person who's done the job properly with Mayakovsky, that I am not a good linguist, and what I enjoy most about translating is the liberty to behave badly on the grounds that the foreign language isn't likely to sue. So these translations are sometimes as accurate as I can get them, which isn't necessarily very accurate, and sometimes they're quite deliberately not accurate, and that's on purpose, and sometimes they're not accurate and that's by accident. And it isn't a test and you don't have to tell me which is which. But I'm going to start, and here I blush because Tom's here. This is one of the sections from Sauli MacLean's poem, Doin do Eva, which was a set of love poems written in Gaelic, which were published in Glasgow in 1943. And rather implausibly, for a series of love poems, this particular one is casting into doubt that enterprise fairly thoroughly. It's section 32 from Songs to Eva. Let me lop with an edge all grace that your beauty put in my verse. Let me make work as bare and pale as Liebknecht's death or slavery. Let me burn the wood of the tree that could grow joyful out of grief, and let me make the people's pain into the hardened steel of song. I'm going to be doing a paper at the conference, and the paper comes out of this Chinese translations project. I'm not going to talk much about that now, except to say that Chinese poetry in its really extraordinarily avant-garde form, which goes back to something like the 8th century AD at least, pretty much stops with the end of the imperial regime and the start of the Chinese Republic. And virtually the last poet to have been professionally trained in that mode of writing is a woman called Jiu Jin, who was publicly beheaded by the Qing dynasty for leading an armed rebellion. So she is a revolutionary, a feminist, and in some ways quite backward-looking as a poet, some might say. But to find out more about that, you'll have to hear my paper over the weekend. So these are a couple of pieces, relatively straightforward versions, of poems by Jiu Jin, whose dates are 1875 to 1907. She came back from Japan, where she'd been in exile, amongst other things, running a bomb-making factory, to have a photograph taken of herself in Western dress, looking very serious, and wrote on the back of it a poem called Self-Portrait. Who is this dignified, serious, forward-looking, brave bones reborn in female form? What was my generation, my world, my life? Fantasy. The to come is brilliant and true. I met the real me late, but passionately. If I look around, I'm roused to anger. If someday you meet my friends of yore, tell them I've already cast aside this trashiness. She led an armed uprising, not on a very large scale, which failed, and while the school in which she was holding out was being surrounded by armed troops and she was under rifle fire, she wrote her last completed poem, which is untitled. One shining moment for action over, heroic heart not called for, regrets. We lashed the wide ocean to get it to move, lifted blades against heaven, made it our whetstone. But iron horses came through the passes and the ravens refused to leave the tower. Body, bones, ground to dust, workaday, banal. Can such animal sacrifice benefit the state? Before I get on to Mayakovsky, with whom I'm going to end this set, a couple of poems by the Cubo-futurist poet Velimir Klebnikov. This is a poem written after the revolution, 1918, called Free for All. Immortal whirlwind, united whirlwind, everyone's for freedom here. People, as if lifted by swan wing, carry forward the banner of labour. Eyes blaze with freedom, shine. Fire in comparison is cold. Hurl to the ground those old icons. We'll execute new ones in gold. Forward march to fiery songs. ahead everyone's for freedom, and should we die, they'll resurrect us, we'll live over again. So we set out, enthralled, chanting in steps as on we plod, and if the gods we meet are thralls, we'll give freedom even to gods. Klebnikov wrote a long poem called Right World, which was his attempt to explain what the new world was going to look like, which was, given Klebnikov, somewhat idiosyncratic. This is a little section of it dealing with the Nevsky Prospect, St. Petersburg. He mentioned Stenka Razin, who led a kind of a people's revolt, popular revolt. And he also mentioned Lobachevsky, who was an extraordinary revolutionary mathematician who woke up one day with the idea of what would happen to geometry if you decided to proceed as if the reverse of one of the tenets of Euclid were the truth, and discovered that you can make an exactly identical, completely self-consistent other geometry, which turns out to have important and exciting mathematical permutations. And what Klebnikov decided was that these were real-world permutations as well as mathematical ones. So this is from Right World. May space defined by Lobachevsky float in flags by nighttime Nevsky. Now let the C for creator replace the D that's for dictator, as the conclaves of the right world name labour the hope of the whole world. As if the rising of Stenka Razin had reached Petersburg as showcase, making Razin Lobachevsky's twin in rebellion's hyperbolic space. Let Lobachevskian curves provide ornaments for cities, arching over straining shoulders of world labourers like these. Then lightning will, electric, howl at being harnessed like a serf, and nobody will buy or sell hidden sacks of stolen pelf. Okay, on to Mayakovsky. Lenin's death was foreseeable because he'd had a bad stroke in 23 and it was clear he wasn't going to live. And when he died in 24, Mayakovsky wrote a book-length poem which is partly a biography, partly an explanation of the political project, and in part a kind of premature critique of the cult of the personality, which is what he opens with. People, prows of ships, cut straight through obstacles. We will live them now, with lots of muddy barnacles stuck to our prow. Then, having fought our way through angry storms, we'll steer through to companionable sunshine and scrape off green seaweed beard and crimson jellyfish slime. I go to Lenin as to a dry dock for a clean, to get myself shipshape for the voyage of revolution. I fret at lines I misshape, just as the young despise circumlocution. You know who'll give any head its halo, and I'm anxious lest they becloud the real, the wise, the humane V.I. Lenin's mighty brow. I worry at processions and mausolea, adulation, establishment, status, that cloyingly they'll obscure Lenin's simplicity with a flatus. I tremble as for the apple of my eye, lest tinsel and bonbon falsely instaurate beauty. My heart votes, I'm obliged to write, mandated, it's my duty. Moscow-wide, the frozen ground shivers with emotion, even in cold of night at watchmen's braziers. Who was he, and where from? What for him needed to be done? Whereby? Why such honours? Word after word I find in my memory's trace, they don't suit me and wouldn't you, so don't get put down. How meagre the world's word workplace. Where to find the right words? We've 7 days to make use of, each of 12 hours tops. Life can't be lived longer than itself. Death accepts no apologies. So if the hours don't fit, too short for the calendar, we'll come up with epoch. We'll come up with era. We sleep nights, days, work gets done. We all procrastinate, cultivate our gardens. And if someone could redirect the course of events for all our convenience, we'd come up with profit, we'd come up with genius. Of ourselves, we don't ask too much, don't make demands, make things too tough. We like to please our old Dutch, and if that's done, are happy enough. If someone comes along, one differently embodied, we enthuse, a prince among men. We're astonished, a gift from God. Said just like that. Will-o'-the-wisp. Not brilliant, not that silly. Words let loose in the air, drift off like smoke. Nothing can hatch out of empty eggshells. Not hands nor head can quite cope. How could Lenin be held to such a yardstick? You could easily see with your own eyes that epochal man come through doorways, his head not grazing the jam. Surely Lenin won't be called leader installed by divine design. If that were to happen, if he were lordly or godly, well, my rage wouldn't let me spare myself. I'd have leapt onto the funeral cortege, the mourners, cut through the crowds. I'd have found words, a thunderous blast, and though I'd be trampled, I and my hectoring, I'd discharge into the heavens all new blasphemies. I'd bombard the Kremlin with words, down with Lenin.